The Russian winter has for over a century been seen as a crippling and unforgiving force of nature, but on December 17, 1869, George Lakhovsky was born in the Russian Empire. His skill as an inventor began in childhood when he was 6. He went so far as to design a water mill. From the age of 12, he studied at a school in Minsk, and when he was 18, he entered the Odessa School for Arts and Crafts. In 1894, aged 25, he became a student at the Sorbonne, where he studied physics and the secrets of building bridges and roads. The same year, Lakhovsky went on to study human anatomy and physiology at the Faculty of Medicine of the University of Paris. While living there, Lakhovsky survived a railway accident. He investigated its cause and developed an improved means of fastening rails to sleepers, which in turn got him a new job. In 1914, aged 45, during the war Lakhovsky served in a number of French missions, risking life and limb for the country he now called home. He helped improve radio functions by altering the spark gap emitter, allowing for better coordination of French troops. Lakhovsky survived the war and then decided to focus mainly on science. He explored the possibilities of a wireless telephone and became acquainted with many influential people, including one of the inventors of the radio, Nobel Peace Prize winner of physics, Guglielmo Marconi, although some historians suggest Nikola Tesla should have been accredited as such, and famous physician and physiotherapist Arsène d'Arsenval. In 1890, inspired by Tesla's experiments, Arsène d'Arsenval investigated the therapeutic effects of high frequencies, which he claimed produced analgesic effects, vascular dilation, and increased organic combustion. After having talked with him, Lakhovsky opted to research the relationship between electromagnetism and cell biology. This would place him in history alongside Wilhelm Reich, Antoine Priore, Royal Raymond Rife, and Gaston Naessens. Influenced by his own diagnosis of the Big C, he began studying medicine and started to develop his theory of a Big C cell. In 1923, Lakhovsky created a hypothesis for cellular oscillation and created the shortwave oscillator, sometimes referred to as the cellular radio emitter, a device that comprised of 2 triode tubes for very short waves, which was fed directly by alternating current from a local supply circuit. The shortwave oscillator was issued patents for the device by the French and German officers. His theory was that a cell is a microscopic oscillatory circuit, and that a process takes place in the tiny nucleus of the cell. The small, twisted fibers of the core were like an electric oscillating circuit. He conducted experiments that proved the idea that the cause of the disease is an imbalance in the cellular vibrations, and to restore the diseased cell it is necessary to return it to its natural vibrational frequency with the help of artificial external support. This newspaper excerpt will help with our understanding. What is disease according to Lakhovsky? It is the oscillatory disequilibrium of cells, originating from external causes, that is, more specifically, the struggle between microbe radiation and cellular radiation. If more microbe radiation is predominant, disease is the result, and when the vital resistance is completely overcome, death occurs. If cellular radiation gains the ascendant, restoration of health follows. Lakhovsky believed that there are basic frequencies of energy for cells, tissues, and organs that are present when the body is in a healthy state. If the energy frequency of the cell drops to a level that is lower than a microbe that is attacking it, then the microbe begins to take over. Lakhovsky developed his MWO to broadcast multiple frequencies through the air to the cells located throughout the body in different organs. Lakhovsky believed that the cells were like miniature broadcasting stations and receiving stations for frequencies. In 1924 and 25, Lakhovsky began working on improving multi-electrode radio tubes for aircraft. The demand for radio broadcasting at the time was high, but the sound quality remained low. Lakhovsky proposed new technical solutions to improve the quality of the loudspeakers, and was granted 6 patents. During this time, He also experimented with his radiocellular oscillator on plants infected with the Big C and got them back to being healthy. In La Science et le Bon Here in 1930, Lakhovsky wrote,
About 40 years ago, 1890, Professor d'Arnoval advocated the treatment of certain illnesses by high-frequency electrical currents that were at the time produced in waves strongly damped by means of a Ruhmkorff coil in the spark gap arrestor. My radiocellular oscillator is a generator of continuous waves of very high frequencies, the first application of triode lamps to biological research and pathological treatments. We know the difficulty of obtaining very short waves because of the parasitic capacitance present in electronic lamps due to the electrodes themselves and within the bulbs, the tube sockets and connective wires. In 1924, when I studied the possible construction of a triode lamp oscillator for very short waves, shorter than 2 meters, the radio-electrical technique in France and abroad was still at the stage of long waves, and the length of the so-called short waves was in fact from 200 to 500 meters. Therefore, I had to do my own research in view of studying a type of lamp appropriate to the generation of very short waves. Thus, I have been led to design lamps with multiple electrodes enclosed in the same bulb. These multiple lamps have been patented in France and in Germany. Later, I intentionally abandoned the idea of working patent and preferred to give it up to the public domain in a scientific aim so that no patent claim could oppose disinterested researches undertaken for the radioelectric prophylaxis of diseases, especially. However, if the French industry did not engage in the construction of these multiple lamps, the problem was reconsidered in Germany 3 years later and partly resolved as a double or triple multi-valve by Dr. Sigmund Law.
In 1931, he registered the invention of the multi-wavelength generator and used this generator in various Paris hospitals. He is said to have achieved great success in the treatment of the Big C, and his illness receded. The following excerpt from Lakhovsky's own work will help explain how the MWO works.
I have demonstrated in my works that these cellular oscillating circuits, chromosomes and chondromas, vibrate electrically under the stimulus of electromagnetic waves and cosmic, atmospheric, and telluric. Now, many internal and external influences may upset the oscillating equilibrium of these cells. For instance, a variation or change in the field of cosmic, telluric or atmospheric waves, a demineralization of the organic matter constituting the cellular substance, traumas causing the destruction by shock of the protoplasm or the nuclei. All living cells are composed of two essential elements, the nucleus and the protoplasm, in which it is bathed. This nucleus is itself composed of many tubular filaments, the chromosomes. In addition, hundreds of smaller filaments or chondromas are present in the cytoplasm.
He now wanted to confirm his conclusions to others. Lakhovsky was given permission from the leadership of several Parisian hospitals to participate in the treatment of Big C patients, and is reported to have made great progress. The condition of the patients improved, and some of them fully recovered. For a clear disclaimer, we are not saying that you should chance your well-being on technology that is not fully understood. Talk to your doctor if you're sick. As time went on, Lakhovsky gained support from many scientists and physicists, but medical doctors were far less interested in his research. In 1934, Lakhovsky successfully presented his ideas and practical proposals at the International Congress of Radiobiology in Venice. He issued treatment to people as well as animals and plants to countries including France, Italy, Sweden, and Brazil. In 1937, Lakhovsky presented the shortwave oscillator at the International Congress of Shortwaves in Vienna. With interest in the MWO growing, Lakhovsky released The Secret of Life in 1939. which gained significant attention among other researchers, and is to this day used by people researching sound-based medicine. As Lakhovsky continued to gain traction, his work was brought to a halt as France was invaded. Lakhovsky was Jewish, leading him to attempt to hide while seeking a way out of France. The MWO's research was brought to an end as the swastika flew over Paris. As if the Nazis weren't bad enough, now they had derailed promising research into the Big C. But Lakhovsky was not about to give up. In 1941, after carefully evading the Gestapo, he emigrated to the United States, where he submitted a patent for a tube for producing multiple wavelengths to the United States Patent Office on November 21st, 1941. Several New York hospitals agreed to test the device, and the results of their use was impressive. For the next year, Lakhovsky worked determinedly on the MWO. Now in his 70s, he devoted everything to his research. His recollection suggests that he was nearing a great discovery. Everything came to a sudden end, though, when Lakhovsky was hit by a limousine in New York and died 3 days later on August 31st, 1942, at a Delphi hospital in Brooklyn. A nurse who saw out the hospital window said she viewed the crash as deliberate. The following days, the MWO was removed from American hospitals, against the wishes of many, an unfitting end for a man who served in World War I and sought to help humanity. In January of 1945, the George Lakhovsky Institute of Multiple Waves was founded in New York. Allegedly, for many years, hundreds of multi-wave generators were successfully used by doctors, veterinarians and surgeons in Austria, Belgium, the USA, Germany, Spain, Canada, Italy, Luxembourg, Morocco, Portugal, the Philippines, and Switzerland. Although the discoveries of George Lakhovsky have been overlooked by official medicine. In 1949, The Waves That Heal was released by Mark Clement, and to this day it is held in high regard by researchers of obscure medicine and spiritualists. The MWO looked set to fade into obscurity, but the public decided not to give up this knowledge without a fight. In September of 1963, Dr. L.O. Anderson of the Anderson Research Center got into contact with a man by the name of Bob Beck, and explained to him that he had found a marvelous electronic machine. This was Lakhovsky's oscillator. The owner of the device at the time luckily had found patents and 2 books describing how it operated, and the two were able to reconstruct the circuits. Within a few hours, they had it operating perfectly. Bob then designed and built a modern MWO on September the 18th, 1963, which was based on Nikola Tesla and Lakhovsky's original work and patents. The instrument created fitted into a briefcase and weighed under 14 pounds. Experiments done on 18 volunteers demonstrated unbelievable results according to their recollection. One of the best results came from a man who had broken his leg skiing, and due to an old polio complication, the broken leg never fully healed, nor did the flesh around the fracture heal. After one exposure, the sufferer reportedly regained feeling in the area and later that day showed signs of nearly normal tissue around the injury. However, much skepticism and warning was given out to the public via the AMA regarding this modern device as being almost like dynamite if used too much. I'm reminded of some of my own experiences seeing people recover from injury very suddenly following use of the organometer. But of course we make no promises about either. For many decades, the MWO went almost unnoticed, until Dr. Stephen Ross, PhD, investigated a rumour in 1983. He made his way to the residence of 2 men named Phil and Arlie. Phil told him that from what he'd seen, the MWO was good at alleviating illness, and very useful during meditation. Phil stated also that it helped him think clearly in his business activities. Ross found it odd that the MWO was only the size of a briefcase, and sounded like someone was frying bacon. Phil and Arlie told Ross that they had used the MWO for many people's ailments, going so far as to say they'd seen people recover from the Big C. For a clear disclaimer, I am not saying you should find one of these and risk your life on it. After Phil and Arlie explained all they knew about the MWO to Ross, they introduced him to Ralph Bergstresser, who was building MWOs. Ross wrote highly of Bergstresser, who worked as a consultant for the government and was very knowledgeable of electromagnetic therapies, also saying he was present when the Gov decided to place the lid on all electromagnetic therapeutic devices. He also took great pride in being the last person to see Nikola Tesla before he died. Ralph revealed that the backbone of the MWO was a Tesla coil. It seems great minds think alike. This concludes the story of the MWO. So far. As to my eyes, it could come back into our focus. You may also be interested to know that I've considered creating a George Lakhovsky MWO to experiment with. Let me know your thoughts on this. If you enjoyed this documentary, consider watching our documentary on Antoine Priore or Royal Raymond Rife. Thanks for watching.